What if I said to you that in Islam there is no Durood or Salah Ibrahimia on Nabi Muhammad? That we, the Muslims, are not meant to add any suffixes whenever we talk about Nabi Muhammad. What if I said that to you? Assalamu alaikum. I am Moses. For those who watch me today, now I'm talking live, but most of you will probably watch me after this video, the stream wraps up. So before we continue, I would like very much to offer a warning. This topic I know is an emotive one. I know this is a topic that will trigger many. I know this will upset many because we, for whatever reason, and this is not the time to talk about them, we have emotional connections and a lot of baggage we carry when we talk about certain personalities, and especially the personalities that we consider to be sacred. We treat with them a specific way. We give them sanctity, and we like to offer them and give them honorifics that we believe they deserve. And having known all of that, I acknowledge that, but I will emphasize that if you continue to watch this video, or if you are to watch this video down the track, if you are not prepared to listen to the Quran alone and Allah alone, then this video will not be for you. I say this respectfully. If the topic is not something you wish to understand or talk about or basically come to terms with from a Quranic perspective, then this will not be a video for you. Now, as I said last time, we talked in this format as well. This is a new format. I can see people who join, and if there are comments and there are questions regarding to the topic, I can take them as well. So just to acknowledge those who are in the comments, Assalamu alaikum to Arsalan and Iron Man, and the other people watching as well. We will continue because I have given my warning. So it is claimed, it is alleged, it is said, people say that Allah and His angels, all of them, they send salawat, or what we call normally durood, to the Prophet. And because they do that, we should do that as well. And there are two ways that are offered to us. One of the way is that whenever we take the name of Nabi Muhammad, we are meant, we're told, that we're meant to say Sallallahu Alaihi wa alihi Wasallam after his name as a suffix every single time. The second way is that whenever we are meant to carry out these ritual prayers 5 times a day, we are meant to recite this formulaic Arabic construction that you can see on the right-hand side, basically for every single prayer. So every time that you pray on these 5 prescribed times, that as I've said, have got nothing to do with the Quran, we are meant to recite the Salah or as we call it, Al-Salah Ibrahimiya, or Durood Sharif, as we say in our language, Urdu Hindi. On the right-hand side is a version that's very common for people in the subcontinent. I know that the Arabs have a slightly different version, but what I've got on the right-hand side is pretty much those 2 Arabic sentences are things that every single one of us learned by heart when we were being brought up. So whenever we were meant to pray, whenever we sat down, and whenever we were finishing our prayers, we would offer this durood, this Salah Ibrahimiya, for or to the Nabi Muhammad. Now, having said that, the question that I always pose, and which is something I'm posing again, is this one. Is this really fundamental one? Did Allah command that? We do what we do. We do because our forefathers did something. My parents taught me to do things a certain way, etc. But did Allah really command us to do that? Did Allah order us that whenever we take the name of a specific prophet, we are to add a suffix to his name? Did Allah order us that whenever you stand up and down in this orchestrated bodily movement that we call the ritual prayer, you have to utter this formulaic Arabic construction every time? Did Allah say that? Now, as a meta question, I might even ask, well, for those who might be wondering, I think it's a very fair question for us to ask, because for those who want to understand what Allah wants from us and what the Quran says, we should not shy away from posing these fundamental questions. What we are doing, does that meet Allah's approval? Did Allah say something that we expect Him to have said, or is that not the case? Before we continue, this is a reminder. This video that we're doing today is the 6th video in a series called Salat in the Quran. Now, some people have commented before that when we come to these videos, we don't understand that this is a series. We don't know how to navigate. We don't know how to go and find the past videos or what video this number is. So just to answer those questions really quickly, if you were to go to the channel, whether from a desktop or from a mobile phone, go to the channel, go to the playlist. As you can see on the screenshot on the left-hand side, there is a clearly written out playlist called Salat in the Quran in English. In there, you will find all the previous videos of this series, including this one and the ones that are still to come. So again, yes, there are many ayats and other points that I have not yet covered in these 6 videos so far that will be coming up in this series. And yes, you will find all of those videos in the same sequence in that playlist. I'll just have a quick look at the comments. So Brother Arsalan, as Brother Ironman said, yes, this is not a Hindi-Urdu stream. I am talking in English. On this very topic, I have already talked in Urdu. So if you are Urdu speaker, Hindi speaker, and you'd rather hear the same thing in Urdu, then the same principle applies to you as well. Go to the playlist, you'll find Namaz or Salat Ka Farq series, and you'll find all of these videos in Urdu. Assalamu alaikum to you, Kamil, as well. There's another question as well, which is not quite relevant to the topic, so I won't answer that right now. But again, as we go on, if there are questions relevant to what we're talking about, then I would like to take them. We would like to talk about them. But if there's nothing that's quite pertinent to the topic, then we'll just move on and stick to what we're going to talk about. I'll get back to the slide. For those who have watched the series so far, you will know that there are certain terms we have covered already, and hence I will not be talking about them again. What are those terms? Those terms are as-salah, wudu, sajda, ruku', masjid, aqimus salah, etc., etc. So if I continue on and I just consider those terms as having been understood by you, I think that's a fair assumption, considering, as I've been saying before, this is a series. If you have any questions about those key terms, instead of asking me here or asking me in comments, I'd really appreciate if you could go back to those videos and examine the propositions that were offered there, supported by the Quranic ayat. We shall continue. And as is the format that we have established so far in this series, we are going to offer a proposition. And this proposition is to do with this particular topic. We have built up quite a few propositions already. The intention is that at the end of this series, I'll collect all of these propositions to do with the topic of Salah in totality, put them together, and we will, in a stream like this, go through them together to really leave no stone unturned as to what is the Salah and what are all the other terms that come around it. So the proposition number 1, and the proposition that I'll like to offer in this video, is this. To do Salah ala, for example, Salah alayhi, is the action of an entity forming a salah, which is two-way connections with another entity. I'll repeat that because it could come across as a bit of a mouthful. If I am doing salah to somebody else, salah ala shakhs akhar, if I'm doing this to somebody else, then this is the action of an entity, me, as I said in my example, forming a salah with another entity. This is how Salah ala has been utilized in the Quran. And to support this proposition, we're going to look at 2 ayats of the Quran to really hammer on this point. The first ayah that I'd like to present to you is first of 2 ayat from the same chapter of the Quran. And I'll point out a few things and then we'll go and talk about these ayats. Both of these ayat, as I said, come in the same surah by the same katib, the same author. Even if you were to not give Quran a divine origin, even no matter where you come from, I think it's very fair academically to say, if an author, if a book that you find has got the same word, the same pattern, Salah ala, as you'll see here in the next ayah, and the author uses them consistently, and it's likely that he means the same thing across the 2 ayat, and not significantly different meanings can be derived from them. So this is something which I think is quite fair, and as an academic, I think there's no problem in me offering this as a given knowledge, and for those who wish to understand, for them to understand it this way. So the first ayah that we've got in front of the screen, obviously all the references, etc., you'll find on the page if you wanted to go and check up yourself, is an ayah that we've covered in the previous videos as well. But today we'll cover the concept Salah ala in this particular ayah. So the ayah goes something like this. هُوَ الَّذِي يُصَلِّي عَلَيْكُمْ. I'd like you to pay attention to how I said that. يُصَلِّي عَلَيْكُمْ Salah ala. Somebody is doing Salah ala kum, to all of us, to all of the people that are outside of this entity. This entity is doing Salah ala to them. وَمَلَائِكَتُهُ لِيُخْرِجَكُم مِّنَ الظُّلُمَاتِ إِلَى النُّورِ وَكَانَ بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ رَحِيمًا. So Allah in this ayah is saying something really remarkable. It is He who reaches out, forms two-way connections with you all. Yusalli alaykum. He who reaches out forms two-way connections with you and His malaika to bring you out of the darknesses, dhulumat, into the light, nur. And He is ever merciful towards the mu'mineen. We'll go on to the second ayah. And in this second ayah, as I was saying before, just to reiterate, we find the same pattern. Salah ala is now plural here, yusalluna ala, and we see the same sallu alayhi. Same pattern being used for the same author in the same chapter. The ayah goes something like this. Inna Allaha wa malaikatahu. And I should take a pause here. This is one of the really famous ayats. In fact, I would say this is the ayah upon which the traditional argument resides, even though it has no merit to stand up using this ayah. But they say that whenever you do take the name of this particular prophet, Muhammad, you are Moses, you are meant to say sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam because of this ayah. This ayah has got nothing to do with that, which is something we'll see shortly. But we'll continue on anyway, and we'll see what Allah says to us in this particular ayah, in the same chapter, using the same pattern. Inna Allaha wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala an-nabi ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. Surely Allah and His malaika reach out, form two-way connections with the Nabi. O you who have believed, spread peace, reach out, form two-way connections with him and submit properly. There's practically no other way to take this ayah from what it says quite clearly to derive some completely different meaning. I'll have a quick look at the comments before I go on to the next slide. And I realize this timing may not be, the timing is obviously good for me when I'm having this talk. It may not be most conducive to most of my audience, but that's quite all right, because I'm hoping that people will watch this more after the fact than those who are watching it live. Okay, I don't see any relevant questions to the topic, so I'll continue on to the next slide. We'll try and summarize these two ayat, because I think the point is really clear, and this is really quite straightforward. What did we learn from these two ayat? Well, I think the answer is quite obvious. If we are to stick to the Quran, which is what I'm proposing that we do here, then using these two ayat from the same surah, there's no way that we could ever come up with the argument that says there is Durood or Al-Salah Ibrahimiya for Nabi Muhammad in the Quran. There is nothing like that. And secondly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not command, because we did not find anything like that. Allah does not command us to say sallallahu alayhi wa sallam or sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, or somebody said washabihi wa sallam every time we hear His name. These two takeaways, I think, follow quite naturally from these two ayat. Now, this topic is quite a simple one. And I said the same thing in the Urdu video on this topic as well, that if I wanted to, I could really stop the video right here. And this could be the end of it, because we will continue on to exploring the topic of the As-Salah, because this is the intention of this series. And we've covered what the meaning of Salah ala is, because this was a pattern that we hadn't quite covered and it came up quite naturally. But I understand that this may not be very easy for some people to accept, because there's a lot of emotive baggage that is attached to this concept, especially for those who come from the subcontinent, people who are being brought up in Pakistan, India, dare I say, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh as well. It is very hard not just for us who've been brought up on this, but for other Muslims as well, to accept the Quran only and to leave aside whatever else we've been taught, whatever else we've been told about Islam and about these different things. Why is it so hard? Why is it so difficult? Because we've got two options, as I always say. We can just take the Quran and see what the Quran says, or we can try and guess or try and wade through the murky, foggy prism of history and riwayat and bashari kalam to try and find what the Quran says. One of the ways is the easier way, which is reading the Quran from the Quran, understanding the Quran per the dictates of the Quran. And the second way, well, there's no end to it. I could have stopped the topic right here, but just to cover this topic off and to completely round it out, I will offer a few points for consideration of those people who would like to basically not accept what I've said so far. So let's look at some of the arguments that I think I'm preemptively anticipating people to raise after this video. Point number one. Before I come to this point, let's have a quick look at some of the translations of the second ayah that I just read out to you. Now, this second ayah, which I was saying, people try and make the case out of it for us to be saying the Durood on Nabi Muhammad. One of the translation goes something like this from Pictol. Lo, Allah and His angels shower blessings on the Prophet. This is Salah Allah. O ye who believe, ask blessings on him and salute him with a worthy salutation. Okay, what does Maududi say? Allah and His angels bless the Prophet. Believers invoke blessings and peace on him. And the other three that I've got there, just for reference, continue on in the same vein. Now, looking at these translations coming from a traditional camp, I'm going to pose a couple of questions. And if we are honest to ourselves, I'd like to say that we will think about them. Point number one. If Allah already blessed the Prophet and is blessing him, then why am I to remind Allah to do that again? If Allah said that He and His angels are shower blessings, and as I'm reading the Pictol's translation here, then why am I asked to ask blessings for Nabi Muhammad by Allah who's already doing it? Let's take it another way. If the sun is shining and the sun's light is spreading everywhere, does it make sense for me to go and ask the sun to spread its sunlight for the masses? Does it make sense for me to ask for something that's already happening? That does not make any sense. Allah does not forget. Allah does not need reminders from me, from you, or for other people like that. If Allah said He's already sending His blessings, if we take it to be this meaning, why am I to ask the same blessings from the same entity to the same target when that action is already happening? I don't think it adds any value. Secondly, if Allah is already doing that action, yeah, and it's something that we can add to, how dare do I or anybody say that they can do something that Allah could not do completely? If Allah has blessed, if you take the Salah Allah to be blessings, if Allah has already blessed or is blessing Nabi Muhammad, what value will I add by doing the same action? This is beyond belief. I just don't know how this could ever be answered in an academic proper way. If Allah has done something, if He is doing something, He is the Alpha, the Omega. He is the perfect being. If He does something, He doesn't need me or you to complete what He is doing. I can't do any better, nor can you, with respect. Let's look at another argument. And this argument is, well, I'm looking at the Durood as we traditionally understand this, or Salah Allah, Durood, Salah Ibrahimia, that is commonly used in the subcontinent. Something really strange in these two sentences as well. Number one, again, these are not to be found in the Quran. So this very famous, these two very famous sentences, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad ila akhirih, they don't appear in the Quran. There's nothing to do with what the Mus'haf of the messenger contained. These are things outside of it. But the strangeness is that it's the same principle, same question. When Allah says that He is blessing the Prophet, despite the fact every time I'm meant to pray, I'm meant to remind Allah, ask Him, tell Him to bless Nabi Muhammad. Why do I say that? Because let's look at the translation that has been put up in there. Sorry, 1 second. There's a little technical problem. As I figure this out. Yep. So it goes something like this. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad. And the translation is, "Oh Allah, let your blessings come upon Muhammad and the family of Muhammad," and to the end. The question is, we know from the Quran, because we read the ayah just before, Allah was and continued whilst the Prophet was alive to send his, let's say, blessings whilst he was there. Now when he said he was doing it up until the Nabi died, why am I meant to ask him, Ya Allah, Allahumma, oh God, Salli ala, I'm ordering, I'm commanding, I'm asking Allah, Salli ala, Ya Allah, Salli ala, Ant, Salli ala Muhammad, wa ala ali Muhammad. Oh Allah, you do that. Same point. If Allah said clearly in his Quran, he did that, he was doing it to the Nabi, what value does it add for me, for you, for all 1.5 billion of us to sit together and ask him to do that action again? Does that make sense? Does that make sense? It's a question that I'd probably not answer right now. I think for those who wish to think about it, this can be quite simple to understand. Let's go on to another point that I would like us to consider. And it revolves around the same two sentences that we know as Salah Al-Ibrahimiya or Durood Sharif in our subcontinent. And this is quite a strange thing that I don't think we think about much. Why? But let me ask the question anyway. Why are we asking Allah to bless the children of one man? The children of a man. Let's say Durood or this Salah or this Salah Ibrahimia does exist for Nabi Muhammad. Okay, sure, fine, given. We grant you this point just to get to the next point in our argument. Why are we asking these blessings for the children of a man without any exceptions? Why am I saying that the children of a man, oh Allah, give them all the blessings just because they happen to have been born in the family of a specific person? Are we Muslims? Are we meant to be fair people? Are we meant to be just? Or are we more like, with respect, our Hindu brethren? Are we making a priestly class like the Brahmins there? Are we making Sadat and Sayyids the Brahmins of the Muslims? Aren't all humans equal in the eyes of Allah as per the Quran? And the only difference between us is taqwa. Or are some of us meant to be getting more blessing than others because they happened to have been born in the bloodline of some specific person? Is that fair? Is that just? Is that what Allah says? Is that what Allah would ask us to do? So when I say, as per the translation that I'm reading here, "Oh Allah, let your blessings come upon Muhammad and the family of Muhammad." Why? Like that well, again, why? As I said before, again a question that I will not talk much about anymore, because I think for those who wish to think, this is an invitation for pondering, for thinking over. I'll instead, just as food for thought, offer one more point for us to think about, because why not? Whilst we're here on this topic, let's continue to have this chat. Let's assume, for the sake of argument and to drive a conversation forwards, that Nabi Muhammad indeed asked us to do this particular form, right? This indeed was something that has come through to us and is part of Islam. Are we saying then that the Prophet Muhammad himself, whenever he sat down for this ritual prayer, he asked himself to be blessed, even though Allah has already told them in the Quran that he was blessed? Was Nabi Muhammad sitting down in this ritual prayer, this namaz, as we say in our languages, and saying to Allah, "Oh Allah, bless Muhammad and the family of Muhammad"? Was Nabi Muhammad saying this for himself whilst he was praying, despite knowing that the Quran that he carried already said that the Nabi was being blessed, if we take blessings as Salah ala? It's a valid question. I think it's a valid question. We should not just discard it straight away, something we should ponder over. But this raises another point. Was Nabi Muhammad not aware of his own Risala? Did he not read all of the ways the Bani Israel, the Yahud, continued to get the scorn, the divine scorn, because they considered themselves to be a special race? Didn't they say themselves to be, we are special, we are Bani Israel, we are Yahud, we are special, we are chosen, we are the chosen people? Didn't the punishments continue to follow them because of these racial claims that those people made? Despite those racial claims, are we expecting that the Nabi Muhammad, whenever he was praying, he continued to ask the same thing for him and for himself and his family? Was he reading out the Quran, which had all these warnings for people who carved out these special races and special statuses for themselves, but despite that, he was carving the same thing for his own family? Is that what we expect from Nabi Muhammad? And the third point, which I think is quite a remarkable one, when I thought about it, it really struck me. It really struck me as something really odd. Why? Because if Nabi Muhammad allegedly is indeed part of Nabi Ibrahim's progeny, then why was he asking himself to be blessed in this same dua or same durood when the Al-Ibrahim was already blessed? Let's read the translation. The translation says, "O Allah, let your blessings upon Muhammad and the family of Muhammad as you have blessed Ibrahim and his family." Now, if Nabi Muhammad was from Ibrahim's family, and Ibrahim's family had already been blessed per this particular pattern, then why was Nabi Muhammad asking for this blessing for himself? Or why am I asking for blessing for Nabi Muhammad when, as a child of Ibrahim, he already has it? The same principle goes to his children as well. The children of Nabi Muhammad, through his daughter, let's say all of them, well, they are all children of Ibrahim, right? If we continue to follow this line of thought, well, then they are already blessed. Why do we then have to say the same thing twice? What value is repetition adding here? I think we're doing nothing here except creating a special class in our part of the human society, the Ahlul Bayt, the Ali Muhammad, and we give them special status because of things like this, despite the fact that this pattern doesn't appear in these two sentences don't appear in the Quran. They've got nothing to do with it, and basically they, quite frankly, I'd say, contradict what the Quran says. Right. I'll have a quick look at the comments before I go on to the next slide. For those asking the Urdu streams, Urdu Hindi streams, inshallah, we will do one in Urdu Hindi as well. This English videos were overdue for a while, so I'm just catching up with them. And yeah, brother Nagito, I have watched you before. It's good to see you here. Assalamu alaikum to you. Muhammad Shah. Indeed, that's a good point. Dead people cannot hear us. It's something I had not thought about. So let's bring up his point here. Allah does clearly say dead people do not hear. So, well, why are we sending blessings to a person who has died? A person who has passed away, no matter how great. He cannot hear you, cannot hear me. There's no value. There's no reason to do that anymore. Okay, I will continue on. The last point that I would like to make on this particular point is, again, something that we do without realizing that actually goes against what the Quran says. And that is about differentiation or making distinctions between messengers of Allah. Now, this is again something that will come up as a bit of a rude awakening call to some of us. But the truth is, per the Quran, a true Muslim is not meant to differentiate between the messengers of Allah. I, you, we, our forefathers, none of us has any right to declare any particular Nabi or Rasul to be better than others. I can never say that Nabi Muhammad was the greatest, the best prophet there ever is, was, ever will be. I cannot say that. I cannot do that. Why so? Because the Quran clearly tells us not to do that. Let's read this ayah and I'll talk a little bit more about it. آمن الرسول بما أنزل إليه من ربه والمؤمنون كل آمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله. This is interesting. This is the key part. لا نفرق بين أحد من رسله. So before that, the messenger has believed in what was revealed to him from his Lord, as did the believers, those who spread peace. They all believed in God and His Malaika and His scriptures and His messengers. We make no distinction between any of His messengers. لا نفرق بين أحد من رسله. I will say this again because this is such an important part of the Quran that even though we read it, we don't seem to dwell on it. لا نفرق. The mu'mineen, the people who understand the Quran, spread peace, they say, لا نفرق. We do not differentiate, we make no distinction بين أحد من رسله, between His messengers. They are all equal for us. So coming back to the point, if all of the messengers are meant to be equal, and they are, for us they are. I know there's another ayah in which for Allah they are darajat. Allah has different rewards and distinctions for His messengers, for His anbiya, for His nabiyun, for us. But for us as humans, we have no right whatsoever to make anybody higher spiritually than others. So if that is true, which it is per the Quran, why have we specifically singled out one prophet in our individual prayer to Allah and added a special suffix just for him? Moreover, we have made this a matter of sin and reward depending upon whether a person says this or not. There will be many who will watch this video and probably afterwards in the comments come back and say, well, this guy continued to talk about this particular prophet and never said Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam after his name. When he wrote out the title, he did not add the SAW or PBUH after his name, or he did not add the whole Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Or if I'm from my Shia brethren, he did not say Sallallahu Alaihi wa alihi Wasallam. But not from his Salafiyya brethren, that he did not add all the Ashab as well. There will be many who will say that, but we have to be honest to ourselves. When we read the Quran, do we not read this ayah? Does the ayah and another ayah like this doesn't it say clearly that we, you, I, all of us, our fathers, our forefathers, our elders, we are not meant to differentiate between them. For us, they are the same. I have no right to make one or two prophets elevated, better, bigger, greater, grander than others. That is quite clear. But it's something that somehow, sadly, slips through whenever we talk about the Quran. And this is, yeah, Brother Negato, yep, that's exactly it. For those who might have missed that point I talked about before, Nabi Muhammad, I was really expecting him to be saying this pattern to himself in third person when he was reading the ritual prayer, or was he meant to be saying Assalamu alayka ya ayyuhan nabi, like we are meant to say when we sit down and we start this the sitting portion? Was he saying salam to himself as well? This is clearly stuff that, well, is full of contradictions and in a beggar's belief, basically. Right, we will continue on. I, at this point, would like to offer a summary. But before even I do the summary, just to a meta view, this will be a short video. And if there are any specific questions to do with this topic, I'd like to go through them. But as I've been doing with the last 2 or 3 videos, these are live streams, because I think the idea is it allows a little bit of to and fro where I can talk in a way to yourselves and you can communicate with me, and we can have these two-way connections as we talk about the Quran. I think from a meta level that's quite neat, that we are in a way doing the As-Salah whilst we're talking about the As-Salah. So in a way, my talking to you in this more interactive manner is my manner of strengthening my bond with yourselves, and for yourselves to do the same with me and ourselves, to understand the Quran, to understand this, to get this fahm of the Quran. Okay. And yes, Brother Negato, yep, exactly as you said. He would not be offering salam to himself, nor would he be returning the salam to himself. Ancient Hamilton, I read your comments, but what you're talking about, I think, has got nothing to do with today. And Muhammad Shah, yes, there are more videos to come in which I'll talk about these as well. All right, let's get back to the summary. Summary, I think, if it wasn't clear up until now, well, quite frankly, if it comes as a disappointment, I'm sorry, but there is no Durood or Salah Ibrahimia in Islam. In the Quran, in the Mus'haf, in the Risala that Rasul Muhammad carried, followed, that he could not add to, that he could not remove from, that message of Allah had nothing at all whatsoever for any suffixes to be added for the one carrying that message. Nabi Muhammad was Muhammad bin Abdullah, he was Rasulullah, he was Nabiullah, he was a great man, he was a fantastic personality, but Allah did not ask us to say any specific things as part of his name and to have them become part of an enshrined, a ritualized, fossilized religion. Nothing like that in the Islam that Nabi Muhammad followed. And this is a reminder, a rejoinder. Rasul Muhammad could not, did not add anything to the deen outside the Quran. He was, as a Rasul, meant to do only one thing, to carry his Risala. And this Risala is with us. If we are to today say anything in his name that he did not say, well, if what we say against Allah is a matter, but we at the same time badmouth and we allege that the Rasul Muhammad failed to carry out his own message because he added to it outside of it. He did not do that. So to summarize the summary, there is no command to add a suffix Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam or wa alihi wasallam or his ashab for one prophet or for Nabi Muhammad. And also, there's no command to ask blessings for a dead prophet's progeny, no matter how great he was, no matter how great. And to recap the proposition we offered as the meaning of Salah Allah, to do Salah Allah is the action of an entity forming a Salah, the two-way connections, with another entity. Not quite dissimilar to what we are doing today here, right now. Before I wrap this video up, what I will do is I will have a quick look at the comments and see if there's anything specific to what we talked about that we can cover off before we round out today's session. So if there were comments before that I missed, if they were relevant, I apologize, I missed them, but if you could rewrite them now whilst I am eyeballing the comments actively, then I can try and answer them. So starting from the top, I'm just going down. Some of these I saw. Brother Arsalan, the approach that I think we should, what I rather use is Quran-centric. We do not deny what happened in the past. We just say that for the purposes of deen, the Quran is sufficient. The Quran is enough. And I've talked a lot about this in my Urdu videos for those who might be interested. Brother Arsalan again. Yep, Urdu stream will be coming, inshallah, when it happens. Continuing on, Brother Nidito. Yes, you were having discussion with another brother. Brother Darth Vader is there. Yes, well, that's an interesting point. What is a messenger outside of his message? And the concept of Rasul, Nabi, Mursil is something I will like to talk about more when the time comes. Yep, I think we've covered that. We've got brother advisor. Okay. I think you speak Urdu, brother. So we did a video on the topic of ibadah. If you could go and watch that video, I think that would be awesome. Okay, all right, cool. We'll finish up today's session on one last ayah from the Quran. وَإِذَا ذُكِرَ اللَّهُ وَحْدَهُ إِشْمَأَزَّتْ قُلُوبُ الَّذِينَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْآخِرَةِ. Whenever God alone, Allah alone is mentioned, the hearts of those who do not believe in the hereafter shrink with resentment. وَإِذَا ذُكِرَ الَّذِينَ مِن دُونِهِ. But whenever there are others apart from him mentioned, إِذَا هُمْ يَسْتَبْشِرُونَ. Then they become filled with joy. Let's hope, let's try and not be part of those people who wouldn't be happy listening just to what Allah says. Let's be from that group who are satisfied with the Quran alone as our deen. Let's be from those people who are in the camp of Rasul Muhammad and follow the Islam that Rasul Muhammad followed. Let's be from that camp. With those words, until the next time, Assalamu alaikum.